Hello! Welcome to the Cleveland Marathon Podcast. I am your host, Adam, and I'm here with my co-host, Jen. Jen, how are you?
I'm doing good, Adam. I was running this morning, and I did a countdown on my Instagram. And as of today, now obviously this will change by the time this is released, but there's 1 month and 19 days until a marathon weekend. So I can't believe how fast the month of March went, and it's literally right around the corner. But I know you are in the thick of marathon training. I'm not running a marathon this spring. I'm actually running the 10K. So how are you, Adam?
You know what? I am enjoying every moment of it. It's obviously very mental, very physical, but it's just, something so fulfilling. It's something that obviously means a lot to myself, means a lot to you, means a lot to everybody who's a participant in and out of the race. And what I mean by that, Jen, is I am very, very, very excited for today's episode. And do you know what today's episode's about?
I do know, but I don't know if our listeners know yet.
And before we start today's episode, please remember to like and subscribe to the Cleveland Marathon YouTube and Spotify channels. So it takes a village to put on the Cleveland Marathon. So obviously what I just meant a few sentences ago, obviously we have the racers, we have the front office staff, we have the ambassadors, we have the local run clubs, we have the official charity sponsors, but we also have the volunteers. Yes, the Cleveland Marathon has a volunteer program of a lot of very hardworking individuals, from adults to kids, organizations, everyone in between. They work so hard before, during, and after the Cleveland Marathon. And Jen, I am very, very excited for today's guest. It is someone who I adore, someone who is borderline family to me. I'll get to why in a moment. But on today's episode of the Cleveland Marathon Podcast, I am proud to introduce my good friend and yours, Teddy Kertis, the volunteer program coordinator. Teddy, welcome to the Cleveland Marathon Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me.
That was a pretty stellar introduction too, Teddy. That was pretty good. You should just let Adam run around with you and introduce you everywhere you go.
No, I was like, I can't wait to get started here.
As I just said just a few sentences ago, Teddy and I are borderline family. Cleveland is the world's biggest small town. So Teddy, would you like to tell the audience how we knew each other or got to know each other, not just from the Cleveland Marathon, but through some mutual connections?
I attended a pub run. I think we were at Collision Bend. It was in my first couple of years, and this young man came up to me, goes, "Are you Kelly's mom?" And I'm like, "How would you know who I am?" And then we proceeded to chat for a little bit, and my daughter Kelly married a guy named Dominic DeFranco, and Dominic was Adam's fraternity brother at Kent State. So we've been like borderline.
Yeah, shout out to Sigma Nu. Shout out to Sigma Nu.
There you go. So we've been borderline family ever since.
And Jen, I don't know if you know this, but the week before the actual Cleveland Marathon, both myself, obviously, Dom, and Teddy's grandson are in my brother's wedding. So, yeah.
That's going to be such a busy month. It's going to be a fun month.
Oh, you're telling me.
When's the wedding?
You telling me. The week before the race.
Wow.
You're going to have to recover quick, Adam.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot, and it's out of town, so it's going to be one of the busiest weeks of my life.
Well, good.
So, but it's exciting though, and as as the audience got to hear, Teddy and I are borderline family, and it was when we first started this podcast, it was an absolute must to get Teddy on this show. And Teddy, let's get down to the nitty gritty of everything.
All right.
What is the volunteer program? The floor is yours.
All right. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. How many volunteers do you think how many do you think we use throughout the entire race weekend? Just
300.
give me a good guess.
300.
I'm gonna guess because of some of the organizations at water
Hmm.
stops. There are some routes where it's like 50 people, so I'm gonna go with 1,000.
Okay, so we're somewhere in between. I would guess there's probably about 350 to 400 people just out on the course. What do we have? 14 water stops, 20, 30, 40 people per water stop. Um, the expo's probably 100 people per day. So, there's five, six, 700 volunteers during race weekend. So there's a lot out, and there's a lot that you guys really don't see. And this is an early shout out to the water stop people because they are like, they get up at, they're out there at 5:30 in the morning and they're setting up thousands and thousands of cups. And, the runners love seeing them out there because they kind of cheer them on and they're ready to get them to the next water stop. And, they do a great job.
I didn't even, I wasn't even thinking about the volunteers at the water stops and the amount of people that are at the water stops because it's true. You as a runner, you're looking forward to getting to the water stops and they do. They cheer for you, they'll high five you, they'll tell you you're doing great and I mean, they're out there, they're just as excited.
So yeah, like volunteers are like, without volunteers, there would be no race. They're there to help at the expo. They greet the runners and answer lots of questions and give them their first race bib. And I think one of the cool things about the volunteers and the participants is, for a lot of these participants, it's their first marathon, it's their first 10K, it might be their first 5K. And, they get to the expo and it's like, there's all these really happy, fun people and just making them feel like, wow, this is going to be the coolest experience I've ever had. So, and the volunteers, in reverse, they get to meet some great people and they feel like they're doing something important. And, it's a win-win for everybody throughout the whole weekend.
So, what are some of the positions in the volunteer program? So, you mentioned that there's water stops,
Right.
and then you mentioned a few hundred volunteers needed in the whole
Right.
setup. What's the rundown on all the positions?
So, so we do the expo, as you know, on Friday. We have the two different shifts from 12 to 3 and 3 to 6. And then Saturday, we're there from 9 to 1, then 1 to 6. So I would say we have about 100 volunteers each day at the expo. So we need greeters. So when people first get into the exposition center, we have greeters up in the main lobby and they kind of direct people where to go. Then when they get down inside, we have people that kind of, direct them to where they pick up their race packets, t-shirts and that kind of thing. And then we've got people that do registration, which you guys are like the greatest. Like I'm so grateful for, the ambassadors because you guys just kill it. Without you guys, like you make my weekend run so smoothly. So we've got people that do registration. We've got people that hand out T-shirts. We've got people that are stuffing goodie bags and giving the runners and participants their goodie bags. So um, that's pretty much it for the expo. But we actually have a group that comes in on Thursday and they get everything set up for the expo. They fold the T-shirts and get the goodie bags ready and just kind of do whatever is needed to get things ready for the expo so it runs smoothly on Friday. Saturday morning, we've got the 5K, 10K. That usually takes about, the goal is to have about 30 to 50, 30 to 40 volunteers. So they get there, 6 in the morning, get up, they set up all the medals, they set up all the beverages and the snacks and get the whole start finish line area ready for when the race begins. And then they actually help the runners find especially on Sunday and find their corral because runners are assigned a corral. So people kind of start out with others that are running about the same pace that they're going to run. And then the runners take off and then the same volunteers are there when the runners come back and they give them their medals and their snacks and high five them. And, it's pretty cool. And same thing on Sunday, but pretty cool because I've seen lots of tears and hugs and marriage proposals and cartwheels and just there's a lot of really great stuff that you see just throughout the whole weekend.
And coming from a guy who hates doing his laundry, especially during training season, folding thousands and thousands upon thousands of shirts obviously needs a lot
Yeah,
of help. So the volunteers, just on that alone, that's heavy duty work.
Oh,
right.
That's
when
amazing.
Teddy said folding shirts, I was like, because I mean, when you get to the expo on Friday, if you're there early, so if you get there right on the time when it opens, the amount of shirts just, lined up at the tables, there's so many I can't imagine. I'm glad you mentioned the registration because I know as a volunteer for registration, we have a blast doing that and meeting runners coming through and
Mhm.
helping them. Some of them, it's their first time racing. Some of them are very experienced and they've been there and they're just as excited. And it's so fun when the doors finally open and they just all come in and line up and are just so excited. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
a blast.
And it's great to have you guys there because you can answer the questions because you're runners and you've been doing it for such a long time. Um, so for me, that's like one of the best parts of being the volunteer coordinator is just seeing how everything comes together. It's like, it's just pretty amazing.
If I was an individual that wanted to sign up right now, I can do so by going on the actual Cleveland Marathon website, and there's a few links to
Right. There's
direct.
a link. I'm not exactly sure which one is, but there's a volunteer link. It's pretty easy to find. You just go in and it takes you right to, and when you open the volunteer page, it shows you all the different shifts that are available, dates and times, and it's maybe 7 or 8 questions, and it's a very simple process. I also have the capability to send emails out to anybody that's registered to volunteer. And it's funny because as the race gets closer, I think people get sick and tired of seeing my name come across their emails because I'm constantly sending them stuff, but it's just keeping them updated with where we're at and what they need to look for and that kind of thing. So we do provide pretty good communication.
So, Teddy, if I was a part of an organization that wanted to get my group involved in volunteering, it's not just individuals that sign up.
So most of our water stops are volunteer groups. We've got cheer groups, churches. We've got people that work together. Like City Dogs is one. They come every year. Um, we've got a couple actually rehabilitation centers for men who are trying to get their lives back in order from just some circumstances that have thrown them off course. So we've got people like that. We've got the Jewish Association, and they bring, kids that are less fortunate. We've got a Down syndrome group, and they bring some of their volunteers along. So there's a variety of different types of people, and there's always something for every one of them to do. So, we encourage it. It's great for team building. Most people, when they show up for a race, they just see all the beautiful stuff that goes on, but they don't realize, all the behind the scenes stuff. And, I think the groups that come together, they get to see a lot of this interaction. And, we get so many people that come back every year because it's such a great, rewarding experience for them. And, we're grateful for those groups that come back every year.
I was going to ask you that, Teddy. Do you have anyone that just has been a volunteer for years and years, probably decades, I would imagine? Do you have anyone like that that just consistently comes back that stands out to you?
So there's a bunch of groups like St. Ignatius comes back every year. They're the band booster, the parents of the kids that play in the band. They've been doing it longer than I've been there, and this will be my 8th year.
Oh, wow.
Um, we've got Jim Mackert, God rest his soul. That's
Yeah.
gonna make me sad here for a few
Yeah.
minutes, but he was always there, and he brought his wife and their friends, and they were there, when the doors opened on Friday, and they were just they loved coming back. So, and we've got a large group of volunteers, and they do a lot of different volunteering, not only for Cleveland Marathon, but they'll do Velasano and some of the smaller races, and they're almost like professional volunteers. But a lot of them are retired, and it gives them an opportunity to get out and meet other people and be part of a big experience. And so yeah, there's a lot of people that come back every year. Jim Macker really stands out to me because he was just he was family. When it comes to the Cleveland Marathon, he was family.
And for the audience that don't know who Jim Macker is, you should, because Jim is truly a Cleveland Marathon legend. He just passed away weeks ago. He's ran in every single Cleveland Marathon event. So 45 fulls, 2 halves, an absolute icon to this establishment, to the city, and he's going to be heavily, heavily missed.
So yeah, if you have groups, a lot of times they can contact me, and I can actually go on our Volunteer Local. It's our volunteer registration platform. I can set up a link specific to that group. So, I will give links out to various groups, and then they will share that with their potential volunteers. And it's real simple. And they can just, in their email, go to the link, and it takes them right to the volunteer page, which is exclusive to their group. And then if you're like a volunteer captain, you can actually have access to Volunteer Local to see your group and your how many volunteers are signing up and your progress and that kind of things.
So you mentioned this is your 8th year with the Cleveland Marathon as a volunteer coordinator, correct?
Right.
How did you get involved?
I was putting together some notes last week, and I ran my first 10K with Revco back in 1986, I think. So that's really aging me. And I did it in a 48:10, which at the time I didn't think that was very good, but I guess
We're flying.
I'd die for that
burning
right
rubber.
now. So I did the 10K for like off and on for many years. And then I had kids, and I kind of, fell by the wayside in my running. But I did a little stint with, if you guys ever heard of The Biggest Loser, the show. Well, they had a group that put on 5K half marathon races, and they were able to utilize the name of The Biggest Loser. They paid a royalty to use their name. And I somehow got involved with that group, and I did that for a year. And then unfortunately, they were no longer doing that. I actually went on the Cleveland Marathon website, and I contacted Joan, and they interviewed me like 2 days later, and this will be my 8th year. Lots of fun, a lot of work, but it's, there's a lot of work, especially about this time of year. And, the week before, 2 weeks before, we're all like, what are we doing? We're crazy. And, but we all come back every year because there's just so much goodness to this race.
Well, you mentioned that this is a very big family environment. You mentioned Jim Macker, you mentioned Jen and I. That's a beauty. Yeah, things are going to get crazy, but just like any other family, we love each other, and we're always coming back.
Right. Speaking of family, some of my favorite memories are my daughter Kelly, who's married to Dom. That's why we're related here. I was able to give her first medal when she finished her first half marathon. And then a year later, she did her full marathon, and I pretty much bawled at the finish line. And it was like one of the coolest things. I'm going to drag Adam into this one. So,
Yeah.
I was able to give him his medal when he did his first race. And I did it more because I just love Adam, and he's been just the kindest person. And I didn't think it would be an emotional thing, but I don't think he expected me to be there to do that.
Well, I'm gonna take a step back for the audience to really give context, because the truth of Teddy's story is this was back in 2021 in the October, when the marathon got moved to October for that 1 year due to COVID. Back in July, I had a sudden loss. My brother suddenly passed of a cardiac issue, and in that period of grief where I was going through a lot, and this is my first year as an ambassador, it's, COVID, the world was odd at the time. And, we're now coming back to somewhat normal, while my new normal was very, very tough. And then in that period of time is where I met Teddy, and obviously with my connections to Dom and everything. So Teddy knew an ambassador lost a sibling, but didn't know which one. And from my understanding, between when we first met and then the finish line is where you put two and two together, and that's when I crossed the half, and Teddy and I had our moment, and it was, and I agree, Teddy, that was that's definitely like carved in stone my favorite Cleveland Marathon moment, because that was, I couldn't, because at one point in that time frame, I with my grief and everything, I couldn't even get off the couch. So like to be able to run that race and have that being my reason why, and then you and I having our moment, um, I will always love you and thank you for that.
Thank you. No, it was special. And, my daughter Kristen ran her first half marathon last year. And, her now husband, he was able to come up and we together gave her her first half marathon medal. And then my son Ricky married a lovely girl named Sarah. And Sarah ran the half last year also. So I got to be up there and witness all that. But, you know, seeing cartwheels and hugs and tears and, a lot of hard work, like just watching the emotion is going to get me emotional a little bit, but
I know we're crying on today's episode.
You guys,
um,
it is true though. It is true, because when you see how much work someone puts into something, and then especially if you have a connection to them and you care about them, to be able to give someone a medal at the end of a race, if you're not in the environment, you might not ever understand the significance of just that moment, and how important it is to the person receiving it and also giving it, and the pride that the person will feel giving it to them, just is really special. So I love that you guys were able to do that. And we've had so many moments where ambassadors have given us our medals
Yeah.
at races, or I was able to give my husband his first medal for his marathon, and just
mhm,
just really cool moments that you wouldn't have if we didn't have the marathon, and those
right.
connections and how special they are, and you'll remember them forever.
I look at your guys' camaraderie, and it's like we've had ambassadors that I've known in the last 8 years, and you guys are like you're some of my favorite people.
Yeah.
Well,
So
thank
it's
you.
pretty cool.
Thank you.
Well, that's the beauty with the volunteer program, is the fact is you don't necessarily have to be a runner to be
Yeah.
a part of this community.
No, not at all. Not at all. Um, we've got, like I said, we have a lot of people that are retired and they're just wanting to get out and do some things. And they're some of our best volunteers. But, we got a lot of families that come. We've got a lot of families that come and do the finish line. And I've got a group. So I work for the city of Shaker in the school district. And we've got a group of guys that, bring kids for volunteers. God love them. They get up at 5 in the morning and, they're trekking downtown. But uh, just a quick shout out. So you can get service hours if anybody has kids that need service hours for school, this is a great opportunity for them to do that. We will sign off on them getting their service hours. So
You
that's
get a
another,
decent chunk of service hours on a marathon day too. That'd be
yeah,
great.
yeah. They're having fun and they're
Yeah,
getting their service hours.
absolutely.
Um, but another thing I wanted to talk about the water stop groups is this was probably 2 years ago. One of the stops, I think, was East Fourth and West Sixth and
Right.
Lakeside. They were short. They didn't have people show up, so I went over there and I had no idea what the water stop people do out there. I get hundreds of volunteers, but I have no idea what they've actually done. So, I get over there and there's like maybe 15 of us and we're like just going like crazy, buckets and filling cups and we just could hardly keep up. And then the race started and it was like, oh my God, it was like a herd of cattle. It was like 10,000 people running full force at you. And it was the scariest thing, yet it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I just have to say that water stop people are amazing and what they do out there. So I just want to give them an extra shout out for that.
Well, they take great care of us, so shout out to the water stations because they are putting in some work out there.
Oh yeah, it's I especially with me, I tend to sweat and I sweat a lot. So getting, the hydration, they're heroes. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of friendships form. A lot of people at
Yeah,
the
I bet.
expo, a lot of people at the finish line. They just met and suddenly they're coming together the next year and the next year and the next year. And, so there's just so many beautiful things that happen with volunteers. They're helping the runners have a great experience, but yet they're having a great time meeting people and feeling like they're a part of something big. So it's pretty cool.
And that's what I'm connecting the dots with everything. So our last episode was with the charity programs. We interviewed Prayers for Maria,
Mhm.
and we're hearing a common trend. It's relationships, friendships, fun. Get involved, Cleveland. It's something
Community.
you want.
Right.
Community. It's just you got to be there. You got to be there.
Another quick thing is, like it's kind of like a wedding. You go to a wedding and you show up and the venue looks beautiful and everybody looks great. And, you know, when people show up for the race, the finish line is set up and, the banners are all hanging. Well, one of my favorite parts of the whole weekend is 4 o'clock in the morning, you're down at the finish line and the trucks are in the finish line area and they're unloading the medals. And, the guys have been out on the course for 3 or 4 hours getting everything set up and nobody really gets to see that. And it's just really cool to watch the transformation um, of how it all comes together. And like the volunteers are a big part of bringing this whole weekend together. So for that, I'm really grateful.
It's just so exciting to see the behind the scenes because I mean, it doesn't matter if it's Cleveland or anywhere else in the whole entire world. The volunteers really do, you know, they're the foundation to a degree. Would you say that?
Absolutely. Um, Without the volunteers, as I said, when we first started, we wouldn't have a race. There's no way we could put on such a large event without the hundreds of volunteers that we use. So yeah, they're crucial. Without them, it just doesn't happen.
Make the world go round. Volunteers make the world go round.
They
Right.
do.
Yeah. I'm
They
glad you mentioned
do.
that too, though, Teddy, because for us, when we're running, obviously we're not able to see all of that happening.
Right.
And you get so hyper focused on the task at hand and what race you're running that day that it's important that we bring that to everyone's minds too, the amount of people that are out there. And it doesn't take a ton of effort to say thanks to them when you're running by. Thank the law enforcement when we run by, and the fire department, and all of the volunteers that are out on the course, and they love it when you do that, and they're smiling back and they're high-fiving you, and they really do make the experience of racing so much more fun.
Yeah, and that happens. Like I've volunteered at other races and I've been like a course marshal or somewhere out on the course just to make sure people are going where they need to go. And people are like, "Oh, thanks for being here. You guys are great. We're so happy that you're here." And so participants are especially grateful for the volunteers. I mean, not everybody verbalizes that, but we get so many awesome comments, through Survey Monkey and just phone calls and emails, and the participants are they're also very grateful for the volunteers and what they do out there because the volunteers are what makes it a positive experience. That's why I keep coming back every year.
Teddy, I can't thank you enough for coming on today's episode. And once again, if you or your organization is looking to volunteer at this year's Cleveland Marathon, you could do so by logging on to the Cleveland Marathon website and clicking on the volunteer tab. And from there, it will take you step by step. So Teddy, once again, thank you for everything. You're amazing in every form. Thank you. Thank you for everything you do.
Well, I just say thank you to everybody that's part of this race weekend because it's a really special time.
Yeah, we're so thankful you were able to join us today.
Well, thanks, and good luck with your training. I hope you guys are
Thank you.
having some positive training. I know as the race
We
gets
are.
closer, it gets longer miles, and but good luck.
Well, Cleveland, when you see Teddy, thank her for everything she's done. And this, once again, has been an awesome episode. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe on the YouTube and on the Spotify channel. And once again, I am your host, Adam, here with...
And I'm Jen.
And I'm Teddy. I'll see you guys in about a month, no, 2 months.
A month and
About.
19 days, less than a month and 19
Oh
days
my
by the time this is out.
Goodness, that is.
It's gonna sneak right up on us.
It did. But I'm excited.
Me too.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Teddy.
Cleveland.
Thanks,
Until
Adam.
next time.